Welcome back to Ready Player None, the only podcast not sponsored by Dollar Shave Club. Previously, our heroes were taken under the wing of Ogden Morrow, one of the co-founders of the Oasis. Assembled in real life for the first time in Morrow's Oregon home, the Gunters prepare for battle using his vast amount of money and resources. If you were wondering why my recap doesn't mention the shock revelation that H is a black lesbian, I was limiting myself only to developments that had some sort of lasting impact or relevance to the story. Burn. Despite my better judgment, let's have a look at chapter 34. I was ready to rock. My avatar was buffed to the eyeballs and armed to the teeth. Buffed to the eyeballs? Wade's packed his inventory with as much magic and weapons and whatever that he can fit in. He's absolutely armed up and he's ready to enact the plan. He's back in his stronghold on Falco. I didn't mention it a couple of weeks ago when he first rematerialized back on Falco, but I thought his stronghold had exploded. Didn't he melt his hard drive when he was captured by the indenturement people? Here was me thinking he'd made some great sacrifice, crossing the Rubicon. But yet again, he's risked everything and lost nothing. He heads down his runway past his X-Wing and the Vonnegut, neither of which he's going to take today. Neither craft would offer much protection in the epic storm that was about to unfold on Thonia. Fortunately, I now had a new mode of transportation. He's referring to the Leopardon, the giant robot from Toku Spider-Man that he was awarded when he passed the last gate. Shortly before I'd been arrested by IOI, I'd taken some time to examine the toy Leopardon robot and ascertain its powers. You know, off-screen, like most things he does. He'd figured out that the command word is just shouting the word Leopardon, just like in Spider-Man, which I remind you is spelled like that because Japanese man speak funny. When he yells its name, the 12-inch robot grows to a size of almost 100 meters. Every feature of the original Japanese mech had been recreated, including its giant gleaming sword and spiderweb embossed shield. They should recreate the fact that it's a man in a rubber suit. You know, just as a note, I'm not being dismissive of Toku shows in any way, even though they're not my cup of tea, but surely part of the appeal is that you can tell the monsters are all people in suits, and all the heroes are wearing spandex. It's the showmanship and self-awareness, not the po-facedness of this. There's an access door in the left foot of the robot, and inside there's a lift that takes Wade up the leg to the cockpit in the chest. He picks up a silver control bracelet, which allows him to use voice commands to control the robot. I'm guessing that's also from the original Toku Spider-Man. All the controls are helpfully in Japanese, and Wade somehow knows to press the right one to make the rocket boots go. As the robot launches from the asteroid, Wade notices there's also an 8-track player, and so he starts playing AC/DC's Dirty Deeds Done Cheap. I question the constraints of your virtual reality when you need a virtual physical media to play music and not just be able to play music at all times, but whatever. Virtual physical media? Ugh. What kind of word construction was that? He shouts, "Change Marveler" into the bracelet, which converts Leopardon into some sort of spaceship mode. I'm not 100% familiar. The voice commands appeared to work only if you shouted them, we're told in brackets. There always has to be a snide comment about the things you like. There's no need to be self-conscious about liking a Toku show. The Marveler goes through a Stargate and comes out at Sector 10, in the space around Thonia. The vicinity of the planet is filled with spaceships of all different kinds. It's like everyone in the Oasis has turned up. Wade reminds himself that they're not necessarily all here to help him fight. They might just sit down and watch, as Artemis warned him a couple of chapters ago.
Artemis. After all this time, she was now in a room just a few feet away from me. We would actually be meeting in person as soon as this fight was over.
I hope that comes across as creepy as it sounded when I read it. His mounting obsession with her has put him in a place of zen. If she's in a room just a few feet away, whatever was going to happen down on Thonia, everything I'd risked had already been worth it. Come on, man, don't be gross. He turns the Marveler back into its robot mode. Everyone around him tries to hail him, asking him where he got such a sweet ride, so he has to turn off his comlink. Ernest Cline's self-insert at the centre of attention, just like he always wanted to be. Wade joins the caravan of ships, and it takes ages for them to touch down on Thonia. The area surrounding Castle Anorak is absolutely packed out. It was like some otherworldly Woodstock. Is that the best analogy you can come up with, you freaking boomer? Every few seconds, some hapless avatar or ship would inadvertently fly or careen into the shield around Castle Anorak and get vaporized, like a fly hitting a bug zapper. That's just an amusing image to me. You just came down to check the final battle and you've lost all your game progress before it even started. Well done. There's a clearing in the pulsing mass of avatars, not amorphous blobs, sadly, where there are 3 more giant robots. This is Wade's first opportunity to see which robots H, Artemis and Shoto had picked. Artemis's robot is a Minerva X. It's a female version of Transall Z from Mazinger Z, and one of the first things Wade notices about it is that it has boobs. As we've discussed, Artemis seems only interested in female counterparts of things. Oh, here we go. I'll read this out as it's written. H had selected an RX-78 Gundam mech from the original Mobile Suit Gundam anime series, one of his longtime favourites. Brackets. Even though I now knew H to actually be a female in real life, her avatar was still male, so I decided to continue to refer to him as such. I did mention that last week, that I heard that Wade would continue referring to H as male. In the positives column, it is framed as Wade referring to the male character that H plays as. In the negatives column, he also says a female again. So maybe neither character nor author are quite as up on identity politics as they should be. I'm going to make the executive decision and refer to H with she/her pronouns until further notice. Shoto's got a Raideen from Brave Raideen. Don't know what that is. Whatever it is, it's red and blue and taller than any of them. The Leopardon... Is it the Leopardon or just Leopardon? Wade in the Leopardon swoops over the force field and lands just above his fellow Gunters. Then he cuts his engines and does a cliché 3-point superhero landing. The impact shakes the ground, presumably injuring many people. And then the sea of onlookers began to chant my avatar's name. Parzival! Parzival! I'm just thinking about Ernest Cline wearing a t-shirt that just says "Look at me" on it. Nice entrance, you big show-off, Artemis said, using our private comlink channel. Did you show up late on purpose? You know, just perpetuating the idea that if a girl is critical to you at every step of the way, she's really super into you, and not just, critical of you. H, who I remind you is a world-famous gladiator, says she's never seen this many avatars in one place. And Artemis comments that she's impressed that the Oasis isn't lagging. Either that's foreshadowing for it lagging for some reason, or just a really bizarre thing to say. We're about to have an epic-scaled battle with lasting consequences for the world, and you're just talking about lag? Strange. Wade takes time to note that thousands of people are just taking pot shots at the shield, which suggests that some of them are going to join in the battle. There's thousands of Sixers in power armor and hover tanks and gunships inside the sphere. In the face of the endless mob that now surrounded them, the Sixers looked woefully outnumbered and outmatched. Shoto's impatient for the shield to go down, allowing H to segue into a quote from Star Wars about Han Solo having the shield coming down. As Wade's telling them it's still 6 minutes to noon, the crowd roars. The massive front doors of Castle Anorak have opened, and Sorrento has stepped out. Everyone boos and hisses at him like he's a pantomime villain, but he's grinning like a heel. He gets into position in front of the protagonists. The only things between them are a few dozen yards and a force field. The army shifts to make a clearing around him, and he's joined by 10 other Sixer avatars. I have a bad feeling about this, Artemis mutters into a headset, because one Star Wars reference isn't enough for this chapter. All the Sixer gunships and hover tanks act like an amplifier for Sorrento's voice, and since there were cameras and reporters from every major newsfeed outlet present, I knew his words were being broadcast to the entire world. He welcomes them all to Castle Anorak, saying he's been expecting them, because that's what happens when you send out a mass email to everybody in the Oasis. He's cocky about the impenetrability of his shield. I'll be impressed if impenetrability is a real word and that I managed to say it correctly without any outtakes twice. So yeah, everybody's jeering him and shouting threats. Wade calls for quiet and tells Sorrento they're coming in at noon, all of them. The assembled avatars all cheer for Wade, but Sorrento, still grinning, says, "You're welcome to try." And then this is presented as the most serious thing in the world. He takes out an item from his inventory. It was a toy robot, a bipedal dinosaur with armor-plated skin and a pair of large cannons mounted on its shoulder blades. I recognized it immediately from several turn-of-the-century Japanese monster flicks. It was Mechagodzilla. Oh no! Not Mechagodzilla! Mechagodzilla's activation phrase is Kiryu, which Sorrento shouts, and it grows to twice the height of any of the Gunter's robots. An awestruck silence fell over the crowd, followed by a rumble of fearful recognition from the thousands of Gunters present. Oh no! The Gunter proclivity to recognizing a thing has proven to be... The Gunter proclivity of recognizing what a thing is from has gone horribly wrong. So Sorrento goes through a door in one of Mechagodzilla's feet, and once he reaches the cockpit, its eyes light up. Then it threw back its head, opened its jagged maw, and let out a piercing metallic roar. I'm only saying that so I have an excuse to place in a sound effect. Editor Gherkin here. Apparently Mechagodzilla sounds like this. So our heroes are being threatened by a vacuum cleaner on helium. Okay, The 10 sixes that followed him out, I'm sure you're wondering what happened to them. They've all got a robot of their own. 5 of them have the lions from Voltron, and the other 5 have giant mechs from Robotech and Neon Genesis Evangelion. Okay, so there's Voltron and Evangelion, 2 more entry-level animes for your checklist. And then there's Robotech, presumably licensed out to the Oasis because both of the people who work for Harmony Gold just have a chubby for money. Oh, shit! I heard Artemis and H whisper in unison. Sorrento has a big come and have a go if you think it hard enough. Some of the assembled avatars turn tail or hesitate, but Wade and his friends are resolved, and it's less than a minute to go until the force field drops. So Wade has Leopardon draw its sword. Page break! Okay, so I read everything after the page break to the end of the chapter. Get a load of this. The first sentence is, I didn't witness it firsthand, but I can tell you with some certainty that this is what happened next. That's an intriguing hook, to be honest. But then, Wade tells us about how the Sixers have an armoured bunker behind Castle Anorak, and it's filled with weapons and gear. It's staffed by a group of automated supply droids. Here's this sentence. Due to a lack of imagination on the part of the supply droid's original designer, they all looked exactly like the robot Johnny Five from the 1986 film Short Circuit. Due to the lack of imagination of an in-universe character? No! It's due to your lack of imagination, Ernest Cline. You crease. So, here's Johnny Five. Excuse me. So here's Johnny Five, noted throughout as being named SD03, Supply Droid 03. And all of its instructions are things that Wade has programmed into it about 2 days ago. So this droid rolls out of its dock and heads towards this armoured bunker. And because Wade put in that requisition form 2 days earlier, however many chapters ago it was, it's entirely allowed to go wherever it wants. So Johnny Five goes into this bunker, past all this weaponry I'm not going to bother listing out to you, and picks up an octahedron-shaped device roughly the size of a soccer ball. I'm just trying to think if there's any famous octahedrons in 80s pop culture. So this little droid rolls in, grabs an antimatter friction induction bomb, and rolls back out again. It climbs up all the scaffolds that the Sixers have put around the castle. Every time it hits a security checkpoint, they're all automated, and it has authorization because Wade authorized it from inside IOI. At this point, SD03 may have drawn a few curious looks from the squadron of elite Sixer avatars guarding the platform. I have no way of knowing. Every time the narrative draws attention to the fact it can use first-person pronouns, I immediately start hating omniscient future Wade even more, because in-universe he's to blame for everything I've just read. So the droid rolls directly to the center of the roof, where a high-level Sixer wizard sat holding the Orb of Ossivox, the artifact generating the spherical shield around the castle. Why would you put him on the roof, in plain view? That's not strategically sound. And then Johnny Five detonates the antimatter friction induction bomb. And just like that, the droid is vaporized along with all the elite Sixers, including the Sixer wizard, and the shield drops. End chapter 34. Oh my days. As if it wasn't stupid enough that your heroic plan centered around Johnny Five turning suicide bomber, the narrative has the absolute cheek to say one of the in-universe designers has no imagination. Is that self-effacing on Ernest's part? Is he finally gaining some sort of self-awareness? Ironically, like Johnny Five? A lot like Daito's death being dressed up in Ultraman trappings. This is not something I'm going to engage with seriously. And I hate you for wasting my time. Oh, and speaking of ridiculous trappings that I'm not going to take seriously, everyone's just in giant robots now? Voltron, Evangelion, Robotech, Mechagodzilla, everything's just coming crashing down into this fustercluck of things Ernest likes. This chapter was so stupid that it was actually kind of fun. Oh man, I hate you. But we're nearly there. 34 out of 39 chapters complete. I feel like I say this every week, but the end is in sight. 5 chapters to go, and something finally threatens to happen in this last third of the book. Honestly, that last chapter was the offensive kind of stupid, but this is just the funny kind of stupid. I've been reinvigorated. If you want more funny kind of stupid, you can follow me on Twitter at The Last Gherkin, or follow the show on Twitter at RPN_pod. Watch along with subtitles on YouTube, The Last Gherkin, and get an MP3 download by holding a seashell up to your ear and listening. In the comments below, let me know what robot you'd pilot into battle. Join me next time as I try and find a funny way to sign off an episode. You ever looked at the waveform for one of your sneezes? Assembled in real life for the first time in Morrow's holiday home. For the first time in Morrow's Ogden's home. Ogden? Oregon. I've had enough of that sentence. Let's move on. He positions himself. He gets into position in front of the protagonists.